Hello New Jerseyans and welcome back to the channel. When I say my favorite ride, what do you think? The tallest, fastest, and longest, or my favorite by ride experience? Statistics usually matter, but today we're throwing that all out the window. I recently went on a trip to Six Flags Great Adventure and got a ride on every major coaster except for one, which I'll get to later. 12 out of 13 is pretty amazing. Now, riding the majority of the coasters, I can formulate my opinions pretty well, and I can firmly say I have a new number one coaster. Without further ado, let's get started. If I do get something wrong, please correct me in the comments. Enjoy your ride. Now, before we get started, I have to mention the one ride I haven't gotten on. I neglected to ride the Joker, the SNS 40 free spin. I probably wasn't missing much except extreme nausea there, but still, a credit's a credit and I need to get it. So I'll be excluding that.
So the first time I went on Joker in Six Flags, the line was short. Now this was good and bad because it coaxed me into going to this coaster, which I immediately regretted upon stepping out of it, but it made sure I didn't have to wait very long for my immediate disappointment. Now, on rides like these, 4D rides, you have to spin around. And I was in the purple seat, the seat that was spinning around towards the very beginning of the drop, or as the website calls it, the over 90-degree Raven drop. Now, the shoulder restraints made sure I wasn't going to fall out, but were also extremely uncomfortable. So, like most shoulder restraints, they held my shoulders in as I slammed down head first into the bottom of this over 90-degree Raven drop. It hurt like being slammed into oncoming traffic, very similar to what I would want to do right after stepping off this ride. It was not worth the wait, even though the wait was essentially just a walk straight to it. When I got off, I was dizzy and sick, and it probably wasn't a good idea eating food right after, but I did anyways. Typically, there's a line that stretches the entire sort of little pavilion it has, and if it has a line that stretches across the entire thing and you are not interested in hurting yourself, I would not recommend you go on this.
Let's get the countdown started with number 12, Harley Quinn Crazy Train. This ride is nothing to gawk at, even for what it's supposed to be. This is a Zero Tivoli model, and is a decent family coaster and is a fun, long ride for what it is. Really, there's not much to say about it, it's just decent at what it does, and a decent ride for kids. Number 11, Green Lantern. I hate this ride. I hate this ride with a burning passion. I cannot believe this ride gets the lines that it does. I hate this ride. This ride is a B&M stand-up coaster, which is by far the worst model of B&M. I rode it in the back, and the rattle was unbearable. First up, there's the operations. The ops when I was there were just so slow. That could be in part due to the restraints taking forever to set up, or just bad operations. Speaking of the restraints, I hate them. I hate them with all of the fibers in my body. They are really awkward, hurt like hell if the crotch rock is under you too high, gives you pins and needles in your legs, and that is only the bottom half of your body. The upper half is even worse. The rattle causes an insane amount of headbanging, and if you stick your head out to prevent it, you then get your shoulders absolutely destroyed. My shoulders genuinely got bruised from the ride. Not to mention, the forces were not meant to be taken standing up. It crushes your body into the crotch rock, rendering myself in immense pain. Not to mention, coming out of some of the inversions, the tight turns that start up the headbanging or shoulder banging, making the ride my least favorite B&M coaster I have ever been on, and my least favorite major coaster in the park. Tear it down.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way. I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Number 10, The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight. A mock Wild Mouse. It's better than Green Lantern. This is a standard run-of-the-mill Wild Mouse, yet it's indoors. It's themed to the 2008 Dark Knight movies, with one of my favorite pre-shows in amusement parks like Six Flags. There's a moment in the show when the Joker says, "Why so serious?" The lights flicker, and the funniest thing is when the ride operator bangs on a metal door with the stick that they use to check heights. Seriously. Anyway, screw Green Lantern. Number 9, Runaway Mine Train. This is their Aero mine train that provides a little thrill, but a really nice view, and a quaint little jaunt through the woods. It has some great flybys by the water, really creating a picturesque coaster for pictures, having El Toro and Kingda directly behind the station building. There isn't much to say about it, it's your standard run-of-the-mill Aero mine train, but still, it's better than Green Lantern. It didn't physically cause me pain. Number 8. Skull Mountain. This ride went up my rankings ever so slightly, but I forgot how much of a good ride this is. My brother is a huge Skull Mountain fanboy. The ride is honestly pretty good. This is the coaster I rode the most on my trip, with 4 rides, mostly in the morning where I got a mini marathon since it was a station wait. The first drop is a great drop for a family coaster. It's pure ejector, and since they had to ventilate the building, it left a window open and light flooded the building, turning the first drop almost into a head chopper moment. I do feel like that made the ride less intense, as I could prep for what was coming, but still, it was a great ride that I would absolutely recommend. Number 7. Bizarro. Nobody really talks about Bizarro, and yeah, that's pretty justified. Bizarro is a B&M looper, and along with the subpar operations, this ride isn't too much to talk about. The inversions are pretty great, the Cobra roll being really intense, and some of the elements like the low-to-the-ground helix, the vertical loop, are really good. They're just nothing to write home about. Like, everything it's doing is what it's meant to be doing, and it does it well, nothing really stands out. I also found the ride to be kinda nauseating, but I really can't hold that against the ride, as it's more of a me problem. Number 6. Batman the Ride. Now I had to pull my hair out trying to rank this above the next coaster, which I'll just combine into one actually. It's number 5. Superman Ultimate Flight. Because they're just so similar to me. They have very similar stats, very similar layouts, and intense inversions, but the major difference to me is the position you sit in. Batman is an invert, while Superman is a flying coaster. Some of the differences also noticed include much more intense inversions on Superman, and what I felt like a faster ride on Batman. But I think Superman has Batman beat, due to its more graceful ride. Both are short, intense, and fun, but it's more sweet nothings for the park that don't particularly stand out for me. Still better than Green Lantern. Number 4. Kingda. Ah yes, we now get into our top 4, and boy oh boy did this park have a great top 4. First, we have Kingda. Kingda is currently our tallest and second fastest roller coaster in the world, and the tallest roller coaster, it's pretty mid. I got the back row, and honestly the rattle on the launch was barely noticeable to me, probably because my face was getting torn off by the launch. The launch hauls you up the top hat, and it's super intense, which carries the entire ride experience. Because after that, there really isn't much for me. Going up the top hat is so quick, but it feels like vertical straight track to me. That may be a tad controversial, but that ride really almost did nothing for me other than the launch. Coming off the top hat, I got some mild ejector, and going back down was more forces than airtime. Then the large straight track to the airtime hill. I got 0 airtime on this hill. Maybe because it was running slow, or just in the wrong row, but the speed is all I felt. I still have this above rides like Bizarro and Batman because the launch is worth the wait alone. Just not much else is. Number 3, Nitro. Right here is a major jump in quality for me. I don't have many complaints with Nitro, the drop is really great, the continuous floater hills are really fun, and the forces are the best in the park, with the bottom out on the first drop and the helix really packing a punch. I was riding with friends, and I even had one gray out from the helix. One complaint I do have with Nitro though, is its repetition. I know it's a B&M hyper, and that's what it does, but it would be nice to see some more unique elements, as its only real standout is the drop in the helix. It's a hit or miss ride for a lot of people, but for me, it's a total hit, securing the number 3 spot on this list. Now before we get into the top 2, I want to express that I had a subpar ride on number 2, El Toro. El Toro would most definitely take the number 1 on this list, if I got a better ride on it. I only got a single ride on my last trip, and on the turnaround here, I began to push down on my lap bar. Not purposely, but the ride was just so intense I was leaning over on it, giving me the most intense staple of my life. When we hit the brake run, I couldn't move my in the slightest without causing immense pain. The airtime was immeasurable though, and it was the strongest I had ever felt. The first ejector hill almost had me standing up. Almost all of the hills were insane, and the speed was also ludicrous. Like the turnaround where I stabled myself, some of the best speed in the entire park. It felt like I was riding a bull, some of the best theming around, and it's good for second place. Number 1, Jersey Devil Coaster. Sorry. I enjoyed the Jersey Devil Coaster a little more than my one ride on El Toro. And if I had more rides on El Toro, I am 100% sure it would be right here. But I love Jersey Devil. Jersey Devil is an RMC Raptor, and it's a great ride. I experienced the very back row and the very front row, so I got the extremes of both spectrums. The back row ride was miles better than the front row for me. The front row had much less airtime, but I'd say a bit more hang time on the inversions. The back row, though, is violent. That is where this ride earns its legs. A lot of people have been saying it looks like the worst RMC, but that is far from the truth. The first drop is godlike, only second to El Toro. It's like a meteor dragging you back down to earth, followed by that Stangle Dive, which is also really, really good. The Raven turn is also really odd. It's like lateral ejector going in, and then coming out, it's like a mini first drop. The 0G stall, though, is also really good, with decent hang time, but the transition into it was crazy. It almost turned the element into ejector hang time somehow. Skipping ahead, the brake run really separates the parts of the ride. After the brake run, I thought the ride was still good, but earlier in the day, it felt a bit lackluster. But once it was warm, it felt like a worthy addition to the ride, giving you pops of small airtime on each hill. The entire ride is great, hitting that number 1 itch. Sorry, El Toro.
Shut up!